further showers coming into western and northern Scotland, parts of Northern Ireland as well, particularly towards the northwest. Overnight, it will remain relatively mild, 12 in Glasgow and Belfast, 12 in Cardiff, 15 in London there. So warm as we start off Thursday, but not oppressive overnight, I think. And a bright start for many, with plenty of sunshine for England and Wales. A few more showers, though, will appear during the morning and into the afternoon, notably for parts of northern England, especially the Pennines, and more widespread across Scotland and Northern Ireland compared with the last couple of days. 18 to 19 Celsius in the north, 23 to 28 across southern parts of the UK, with plenty of sunshine once again and light winds for parts of England and Wales, particularly the further south you are. Into the evening on Thursday, the showers ease away, clear skies for a time, but a little feature will bring some outbreaks of rain into western Scotland and Northern Ireland by the end of the night. And temperatures will stay up in the teens in many places, perhaps dipping into the single figures in some very sheltered spots. So again, not oppressively warm overnight, but not particularly chilly either. Clear start to the day on Friday in the south, plenty of sunshine here. Cloudier further north with outbreaks of rain moving through Scotland and Northern Ireland during the morning. They clear and then sunshine widely on Saturday and Sunday and turning hotter.
We are GB News.
We're right across this great nation.
On TV.
On radio.
On digital. Absolutely everywhere.
We don't talk down to you.
We embrace all voices with honest and civilised conversation.
We are not part of the establishment.
We're one of you.
And we're only getting started.
Join us on GB News,
The People's Channel.
Britain's news channel. Hi there, it's Stephen and Anne.
At breakfast from 6 a.m, you'll always be caught up with everything you need to know, the latest headlines, opinions and debates.
We'll bring you the good news and the bad, but most of all, we're here for you.
Remember, send in your views and let us know what you would like us to talk about.
That's because we're your news channel. And every morning at 6 a.m, it's breakfast on GB News.
My name's Tom Harwood and join me 9:30 a.m. every weekday for The Briefing, your one-stop shop for everything you need to know about what's going on in politics today.
I wonder if this is a deal that might need to be like the biscuits in this factory, twice baked.
Is there not an opportunity here to win out against the extremes?
Tom Harwood, GB News.
What are you going to do about it?
Things should have been done differently, and they certainly are being done differently.
Don't miss it. The Briefing with me, Tom Harwood, 9:30 Monday to Friday on GB News.
Where would you like to go?
Just take me to the studio, please, Matt. You know where you're going. I've got a show to do. Friday Night Feast on GB News, 7 p.m. And it's like nothing you've ever seen before. We take a different angle on the week's biggest news stories. The viewers and listeners set me some absolutely mad challenges to do. We tried to rehome a rescue dog. And yes, there's some other wacky stuff in there as well. I feel like I could take on the world. Well, that's that. Friday Night Feast with me, Patrick Christie's, every Friday, 7 till 9 p.m. on GB News. Be there.
Hi there and welcome to Brazier. Some fast-paced news from 4 until 6 in the next hour. Right now, they are counting the votes in the Tory leadership contest. We will bring you the results live at 5 p.m. Last night, candidates with the support of fewer than 20 fellow MPs, they were dumped from the race. They included the former Health Secretary, Sajid Javid. Who will get the chop today? Will it leak out before the official news is announced? Well, since then, Penny Mordaunt's formally launched her bid for Prime Minister. We've got details of that extraordinary poll in her favour. Stand by for the results live from the 1922 committee and Sir Graham Brady in less than an hour from now. Also today, the number of migrants who have crossed the English Channel in small boats this year hit 14,000 today. We'll get the latest from our Home and Security editor, Mark White. And with me for the next 2 hours, Cathy Gingell, editor of The Conservative Woman, and I have to warn Penny Mordaunt, no fan of her candidature. First, the latest news headlines with Olivia.
Thank you, Colin. Good afternoon. It's 1 minute past 4. I'm Olivia Guthrie in the GB Newsroom. As we've just been hearing, the voting has closed in the first round of the Tory leadership election. 8 candidates are in the running. They'll need at least 30 votes to stay in the race. The results will be announced in an hour's time. A YouGov poll says former Defence Secretary Penny Mordaunt is the favourite to win amongst Conservative voters. Former Brexit Secretary David Davis is backing her and says her plan for the economy is strong.
This is a thoughtful approach which will actually work. And that's the key point. Will it work? If we are running an economic policy that's working in the next general election, we'll win. If we're running one which is made up of populist nonsense, we'll lose.
Boris Johnson has defended his record in office, saying he will leave Downing Street with his head held high. In the first Prime Minister's question since his resignation, Mr Johnson was accused of leaving behind a broken economy. The Prime Minister says he thinks his team in government has done a remarkable job in helping the country through difficult times. New figures show more than 200,000 people in the UK have had COVID-19 recorded on their death certificate since the pandemic began. The grim milestone was reached a few weeks ago amid a surge of cases in the UK this summer. The ONS says the highly transmissible Omicron subvariant BA2 now accounts for most of the new COVID cases. The latest figures say about 2.7 million people are thought to be infected. Rail operators and workers at Network Rail have voted to strike on July the 27th. The 24-hour action will start at 2 a.m. It's over pay, jobs and conditions. The RMT union rejected an offer made by Network Rail, saying it represents a real-term pay cut for its members. Unions held 3 strikes last month, which caused travel disruption across the country. The UK economy grew by 0.5% in May, following a 0.2% drop in April. That's according to official figures. Analysts had expected the figure to remain flat. The Office for National Statistics says the growth came after a bounce back across all services, manufacturing and construction, with a notable increase in demand for health services and holidays. Economics commentator Laurie Laird told GB News a recession isn't likely.
So there was one anomaly, which is our going to the GP more often, that kept us in the black this month around. But because May was so strong, it looks like we will probably not contract in the second quarter. So it means that this talk of recession is still some way off.
A French government report has found Liverpool fans were unfairly blamed for the chaos at the Champions League final in Paris in May. Police fired tear gas at fans after some were accused of trying to use fake tickets to gain entry into the stadium. The report says authorities must learn lessons and apply them to the hosting of next year's Rugby World Cup and the 2024 Olympic Games. Sri Lanka, the president of Sri Lanka has temporarily authorised the country's prime minister to carry out presidential duties. It's amid ongoing protests in the country caused by anger over inflation and widespread fuel and medicine shortages. President Rajapaksa has fled to the Maldives hours before he was due to resign. He's insisting he still intends to step down. Demonstrators have stormed the Prime Minister's office and continued to call for his resignation as well. An amber warning for extreme heat has been issued for this Sunday and next Monday. The Met Office are warning of exceptionally high temperatures that could impact infrastructure and travel. They say it could also cause adverse health effects leading to potentially serious illness or danger to life, and these are not limited to those most vulnerable to extreme heat. This is GB News. We'll bring you more as it happens. Now it's back to Colin.
Six minutes past 4. Fasten your seatbelts. Half an hour ago, Tory MPs, they finished voting for their 8 leadership candidates. Assuming the numbers don't leak before then, we will get the official result read to us by Sir Graham Brady at 5 o'clock. We'll bring that to you live. They are the current 8 candidates. who will still be in the running beyond 5 o'clock. And to recap, the object of the exercise now is to win 30 votes. Any fewer than that, and candidates are thrown off the ballot. Last night, the field was whittled down to those 8 we just flashed up. Apologies for listening on the radio, you know who they are. A ballot in which the runners needed the support of 20 MPs, and that meant that, for instance, Sajid Javid didn't make the cut. But did we actually learn today, effectively, who the next Prime Minister might well be? Earth tremors were sent through Westminster by a poll of Conservative Party members, and it showed that Penny Mordaunt, the Trade Minister, would beat pretty much any other Conservative candidate by a country mile. If, that is, she gets into the last 2, whose names go before the Tory party members. Away from the Tory leadership race, but still in Westminster, things became heated. Prime Minister's penultimate PMQs in office today as the Speaker of the House, Sir Lindsay Hoyle, as you're about to see and hear, really lost his cool.
Order! Order! I say to the honourable gentleman, give me this. I will not tolerate such behaviour. If you want to go out now, but if you stand again, I will order you out. Make your mind up. Either shut up and get out. I now warn the honourable members that if they persist in refusing to comply with my order to withdraw, I shall be compelled to name both of them, which may lead to them being suspended from the House. I order... Shut up. Shh. Neil Lambie, I am now naming you and Kenny McCaskill to leave this chamber. Sergeant, deal with them.
Cathy Gingell is my studio guest today. Cathy's not as angry as Sir Lindsay Hoyle. You're angry with Sir Lindsay.
Well, no, it was, I don't know, the febrile thing in Parliament and the leadership must have got to him.
The heat.
But it was
the heat.
The heat. So we sort of might forgive him. But it really was astonishingly bad behaviour as an example of how not to be with people you're reprimanding. He sank to their level. I mean, I don't know how often I've heard a speaker say, shut up, and I think he said it twice, and he shouted it, and he pointed his finger. Well, probably we have had some terrible speakers. I am remembering. We've had one particularly atrocious speaker. But Lindsay Hoyle, if you were a headmaster in a school and the school was out of order, that isn't how you'd get them back into order. He's not got the personality or the character to control Parliament. He shows to have no authority today. It made me flinch watching that.
And do you not think that actually it's worth bearing in mind over hundreds of years, the cockpit of the nation, the House of Commons chamber, it's seen some very high emotions, and actually there is an element of theatre to what goes on there. I didn't get that. I didn't have that reaction to what Lindsay Hoyle said at all. I thought it's part of the rough and tumble of politics. What happens in that chamber really matters, and sometimes people become highly emotive.
Yes, I think so, but I think the best speakers haven't been. And I'm not exactly an expert on the history of all the speakers, but Parliament's deteriorated as the speakers have deteriorated.
OK, on that, thanks very much indeed, Cathy. Let's turn to our political editor, Darren McCaffrey, who joins us now from outside the Palace of Westminster. Darren, do you want to talk about Lindsay Hoyle first? We'll get that one clear. It was unusual, wasn't it?
Yeah, it certainly was unusual, but it was an unusual kind of rogue protest, wasn't it, by those 2 Alba MPs who clearly wanted to make a point. They're now being suspended from Parliament for 5 days. Really interesting. I was in the press lobby, as I am at every PMQs, and it's quite difficult to judge these things, actually, because we can't see the Alba MPs and we can't see the Speaker either because we're sat behind him. I think what people don't sometimes realise is just the sheer wall of noise in that chamber that doesn't really get picked up by the mics. And I say that because what you had as those Alba MPs refused to sit down and frankly kept on ranting is hundreds of Conservative MPs essentially also telling them to shut up and making quite a racket. And so I think for the Speaker, let's be fair to Lindsay Hoyle a little bit, trying to control, hundreds and hundreds of people who are very loud and quite forceful, let's say, in their loudness as well, it is not an easy task. And simply to be heard in that chamber, because again, MPs can't hear the microphones, all they can hear is projected voices, is not very easy at all.
Find ourselves missing little John Bercow bellowing, order, order. Maybe today there was some need.
You
for
can say that.
Yeah, thanks, Darren. Let's talk about the main event today then. 5 p.m. Will it leak out before then, or is it the first we'll hear is from Sir Graham Brady?
I suspect it probably won't, actually. They've run a pretty tight ship, haven't they, so far, Colin? We didn't really know. Suella Braverman got herself in a little bit of trouble by revealing on Twitter that she'd reached the threshold yesterday of 20. But aside from that, there wasn't many leaks. I suspect we probably won't. We're going to get that result in, just over 45 minutes time. As you said, the key question is who will get through to the second round. We know almost certainly people like Rishi Sunak, Penny Mordaunt, Liz Truss will almost certainly get there in the fact that they've got in and around, if not well above, the 30 MPs needed. It's those that don't make that 30 that'll be interesting. In fact, they all could, and we will still lose a candidate because there will at least be one person knocked out today. So if everyone go over 30, it is the person with the lowest number who will still leave this process. You'd have to reckon that Nadhim Zahawi's in trouble. You'd have to reckon that Jeremy Hunt is in trouble. Maybe Suella Braverman as well, that they will struggle maybe to get to that 30 number. And then the big question, of course, is where do their supporters go? Where do they go? And it is fascinating thus far, Colin, that we've got upwards of 100 Conservative MPs who still not declared publicly who they are backing. Really big names as well. We don't know who Theresa May is backing in this campaign. We don't know who Priti Patel is backing. We don't know who Ben Wallace is backing. I could go on and on and on. There are quite a lot, actually, of unknowns in all of this, and that is why the process is so unpredictable. But you are right, and you've been talking about, and you and I were talking about this about 10-15 minutes ago, that there is a real sense of momentum now behind Penny Mordaunt. She's clearly picking up quite a lot of MPs. She's second behind Rishi Sunak. And there's also a sense that her campaign are quite motivated by some of these figures that have coming out. 27% of Conservative members in that YouGov poll saying that they want her to win, that she is by far the favourite when it comes among the 8 candidates, and that she would beat every other candidate in the final 2 if she gets there. Though there is one note of caution I would add to all of this, that Penny Mordaunt's still a pretty unknown figure outside Westminster. Savant have done a poll as well today which suggests that only 14% of Conservative members, when shown a picture of her, actually knew who she was, and that was only 11% among the general public. So, frankly, let's be honest about this, many people don't frankly know who Penny Mordaunt is at this stage of the campaign.
Well, we aim to be a cure to that level of ignorance. Darren, thanks very much indeed. Darren McCaffrey, much more from Darren throughout the course of the next hour or two. Well, as Darren was indicating, all over the country, the sound could be heard this afternoon of the words Penny Mordaunt being tapped into Google. The reason is that sensational YouGov poll published today showing that the Trade Minister is way, not by a bit, way ahead of other candidates. Not with MPs, and as Darren indicated, not with the public, who don't really know who she is, but ahead of other candidates when it comes to who Conservative Party members, the party membership, want to be their leader. What then do we know about a woman nicknamed Penny Dormant for her recent relative political inactivity? She's 49, she was born in Devon, she's divorced, no kids, read philosophy at Reading University and worked for some time in PR, public relations. Her voice won't necessarily be familiar to some viewers and listeners, so here is a clip of Penny Mordaunt addressing supporters and journalists earlier today.
If we do not win the next general election, all those opportunities and the vision that the British people had from us leaving the European Union will not be realised. We must win that election. Yeah. I am your best shot at winning that election. I am the candidate that Labour fear will get.
Well, Cathy Gingell was my guest today, and did you found or edit Conservative Woman?
I founded it with Laura Perrins, and I edit it. And Laura Perrins is a key writer and participant in the whole process.
It's a very influential organ of as the name on the tin suggests, conservative thinking amongst women. Here is a Conservative woman about whom you say what?
Well, first of all, I cannot forget that this woman stood up in Parliament and said, let me be clear, trans men are men and trans women are women. She was basically willing to undermine science. She was willing to undermine thought, clear thought, and it was basically a lie. Although she's tried to get out of this with this complex Twitter Twitter thread that people may or may not know about, she's basically morphed her position. So that says two things. One, that she was extremely gullible when she was in charge of that department, and she helped aid what's been a very destructive agenda, and very destructive to women. I mean, let's be clear about this, and very destructive to children, because it's become a cult and a fashion that's been given some political support. But the second part of it is, I really don't like people who can't apologise and say I was wrong. So if she was wrong on that, just say it. I was taken in, I was gullible, I was wrong. That makes me believe how many other things is she going to slide over and morph over. We think, on the Conservative woman, she is the morphing Penny Mordaunt and was not to be trusted, and Conservative voters in the country really need to read the article we're putting up about her tomorrow on the site, and they'll be shocked.
Crikey. OK, Cathy, thanks very much indeed. Let's turn to Henry Hill, news editor of Conservative Home. Henry, I wonder if you heard what Cathy Gingell was saying there. Conservative woman putting out a piece tomorrow. Sounds like a well-constructed hatchet job of Penny Mordaunt. And Cathy thinks she's got plenty of material to work with.
Well, I think most people simply don't know very much about Penny Mordaunt, and that's to her advantage, because she's in this sort of sweet spot where she has cabinet experience, unlike Kemi Badenoch, but she hasn't served in Boris Johnson's cabinet, so she's got a bit of distance from the discredited outgoing regime. She is telegenic and is slightly right-coded in that she's got some military experience and everything else. There are some controversial issues, particularly her view on the trans stuff, which is dogging her campaign a little bit. But she's currently taking advantage of the fact, I think, that she's a relative unknown, competing against people who've been serving in a relatively unpopular government. Now, that might change. Part of the process of the leadership contest is it will expose candidates to more scrutiny, and she needs to make sure that she's ready for that. But she's had an excellent start.
Henry, what's striking? I mean, I know it's only 800 or so Conservative Party members who've been polled by YouGov, but that lead she enjoys in that poll of members. I mean, it is visible from space. It's almost unaccountably big. Sampling error or a genuine reflection of, admittedly, what little people members know about her, but of what they think they know about her?
Well, it's interesting because Conservative Home runs a survey. It's not a scientific poll, but we survey a panel of proven party members and activists every month. And we ran a special survey for the leadership. We've now run two, and we've found Penny Mordaunt in the lead. She wins every single head-to-head, and she's the top preference amongst party members. And now YouGov have conducted a scientific poll, conducted according to the Polling Council rules, and they've found a very similar result. Now, there will be difficulties polling a group as small as the Conservative Party membership. I think there are about 160,000 of them total, so it's harder to, and we don't have perfect information about them, so it's harder to weight it compared to, say, a poll that's meant to represent the nation at large. But the available evidence we have is that Penny Mordaunt is very popular. It's hard to think why all of these polls would be so out of line. They're definitely picking up something. Of course, it could be the case that the very fact that she's getting all this attention early on is meaning that the Conservative selectorate, which is tuning into this race, is picking up on Penny where they might not have otherwise.
Henry Hill, as ever, really appreciate your time and your analysis. Thanks very much indeed. Let's turn to the Conservative MP for Shrewsbury and Atcham, that's Daniel Kaczynski, who is backing Jeremy Hunt. Daniel Kaczynski, appreciate your time. Shirt sleeves order on College Green. It's very warm today. That might account for Sir Lindsay Hoyle's outburst, but we'll leave that for another time. Jeremy Hunt, how optimistic are you about his chances at 5 o'clock?
Well, we've worked very hard on his campaign over the last few days, and very heartened by the support that he's getting from all strands of the Conservative Party. We'll find out at 5 o'clock how the candidates do. But what really heartens me, and I've been to the hustings this morning, is the sheer breadth of and diversity and quality of our candidates. That is really, really striking, and I'm very pleased that despite the very difficult period that we've been through as a governing Conservative Party, that some of the brightest talents that we have in the parliamentary party are now getting so much airing in the media, and I would be very happy if any of them really became Prime Minister.
That's interesting. Daniel Kaczynski, can you just help us paint a picture for our viewers and listeners of what the process is? I think it's committee room number 10, isn't it? As Conservative MPs, yourself amongst them, file into committee room 10. No smartphones, we're told.
Yes, I think I mean, it's committee room 14, and we had our mobile phones taken off us when we came into the room. I think it's because they don't want anybody taking photographs of the ballot paper, either to prove that they voted for one candidate or not, as the case may be. So that's a rule that they've implemented, and we had to give up our phones. It's not a particular inconvenience.
You say you'd be very happy with any of the 8 remaining candidates. The party membership has shown in a poll by YouGov would be very, very happy to see Penny Mordaunt as the next Conservative Party leader and hence Prime Minister. How do you feel about Penny Mordaunt being PM?
Well, I've got some very senior members of my association who are very strong Penny Mordaunt supporters and who have been talking to me about her. Clearly, party members have a different assessment and also interaction with the leading contenders than we do here in the House of Commons. But certainly Penny Mordaunt has undoubtedly made a very strong hit with regards to the way she's communicating on television and the messages that she's conveying. There's no doubt in my mind that she is getting a lot of support from association members. I also have association members who are backing my own candidate of Jeremy Hunt. I supported him really because of his experience in cabinet. He was a very successful Foreign Secretary and Health Secretary. I've known him, worked with him for 17 years. He's a close personal friend. So I think we all have different reasons for backing different candidates. But the main thing is, as was outlined in the Times newspaper today, that we should celebrate the diversity of our candidates and the quality of them, and in fact that we are having a genuine debate as to what ought to be the future of our country, in particular with regards to taxation and how this government in the remaining 2 years it's got left before we have to face the electorate sort out this cost of living crisis which is affecting everybody across the United Kingdom.
Daniel Kaczynski, MP, thanks very much indeed for your time. Just a final thought from Cathy Gingell, who's alongside me. Daniel Kaczynski, MP for Shrewsbury there, thinks this has been a fantastic exercise in ventilating opinion and ideology within the Conservative Party. I wonder how many fresh ideas have been ventilated over the last week?
I think Kemi Badenoch has actually, for the first time, put up a coherent statement, a Conservative type of statement, that wants to go back to basic Conservative principles, or at least she says that. So I think that's new. And I agree with Daniel insofar as it was only by getting rid of Johnson and having this thing that unknown people could come forward. Nobody knew who was there, and it had been dominated from the top. So that's all good, but I cannot say it's an impressive bunch of people. Because the Conservative Party is not impressive itself. So I think there are a lot of people equally. I was having dinner with basically true blue Conservatives last night, and they are all dismayed by the quality and the experience of the candidates, the real life experience, the real work experience. Too many are career politicians, technocrats, or don't have proper ministerial experience. So I can't be quite as sanguine as he is.
Interesting. Cathy, for now, thanks very much indeed. Also coming up today, 14,000 migrants will have crossed the English Channel in small boats, some of them not so small, this year. A total of 396 small boats have now been seized by the British authorities. We'll speak to Mark White about the latest figures. And at 5 o'clock, we'll go to the 1922 Committee of Backbench Conservative MPs to find out which leadership candidates have secured the backing of 30 colleagues and are through to the next round. Voting closed at 3:30. The votes we think are being counted right now. We'll see you after the break.
We are GB News.
We're right across this great nation.
On TV.
On radio.
On digital. Absolutely everywhere.
We don't talk down to you.
We embrace all voices with honest and civilised conversation.
We are not part of the establishment.
We're one of you.
And we're only getting started.
Join us on GB News,
the People's Channel,
Britain's news channel. Hi there, it's Stephen and Anne.
At breakfast from 6 a.m, you'll always be caught up with everything you need to know, the latest headlines, opinions and debates.
We'll bring you the good news and the bad, but most of all, we're here for you.
Remember, send in your views and let us know what you would like us to talk about.
That's because we're your news channel. And every morning at 6 a.m, it's breakfast on GB News.
My name's Tom Harwood and join me 9:30 a.m. every weekday for The Briefing, your one-stop shop for everything you need to know about what's going on in politics today.
I wonder if this is a deal that might need to be like the biscuits in this factory, twice baked.
Is there not an opportunity here to win out against the extremes?
Tom Harwood, GB News.
What are you going to do about it?
Things should have been done differently, and they certainly are being done differently.
Don't miss it. The Briefing with me, Tom Harwood, 9:30 Monday to Friday on GB News.
Where would you like to go?
Just take me to the studio, please, mate. You know where you're going. I've got a show to do. Friday Night Feast on GB News, 7 p.m. And it's like nothing you've ever seen before. We take a different angle on the week's biggest news stories. The viewers and listeners set me some absolutely mad challenges to do. We tried to rehome a rescue dog. And yes, there's some other wacky stuff in there as well. I feel like I could take on the world. Well, that's that. Friday Night Feast with me, Patrick Christys, every Friday, 7 till 9 p.m. on GB News. Be there.
Fraction over 30 minutes away from the announcement from Sir Graham Brady as to which Conservative candidates, which Conservative MPs go through to the next round of voting to be the next leader of that party and the Prime Minister of the country. So with an eye on that, we'll move to our next story, and that is that GB News can reveal the number of people who've crossed the English Channel in small boats this year has now gone through 14,000. A total of nearly 400 small boats, sometimes not so small actually, have been seized by the authorities. There was also a raid yesterday in which the National Crime Agency arrested 4 suspected senior members of a criminal gang believed responsible for the smuggling of people on small boats and in the back of lorries. Mark White, our Home and Security Editor, is here. Mark, we get you in every time there's a milestone, which means you're on virtually every day.
Unfortunately, yes. We are at that mark now, 14,000. 14,089, actually. We're just about at half the number for the entire year. Last year, 28,500. Now, the difference is, although you might think, well, we're halfway through the year, half the mark, it's going to be the same as next year, but we're not. We're into the summer months now, which means that it's flat calm for a lot of the time out in the Channel, ideal weather conditions. So it's days when you see boats like this, the Typhoon, which is one of the Border Force catamaran vessels that picks up 80, 100 at a time and takes them over. And as you say, 400 odd can come easily on any given day. I think this morning we were talking about 100 just over who had arrived, but there were more interceptions taking place in the Channel, in the Channel as well. So we could be looking at a couple of hundred or more by the end of today.
Cathy?
It's horrifying. After I was on last time and we talked about it, I checked back with the Conservative woman and we did our first alert. The first cross-channel were in 2016 and really they failed to bite the bullet then. Nobody took any notice. We actually predicted it was going to be like the Mediterranean. And it was a real failure of government not to grab it then before it was out of hand. Now we have a ferry service taxiing people in. It's not fair on people who are trying to get into the country legally. It's wicked.
One of the things I think that's interesting to focus on that came out of arrests that took place yesterday, some dramatic arrests of 4 people described as senior members of an organised crime network involved in not just smuggling people across the Channel on small boats, but in the backs of lorries. Now, we've spoken about this before, Colin. A lot of focus, understandably, is on the small boats coming across the Channel because that is the most high-profile crisis at the moment. It's very visible, these people coming across every day in these boats. But don't forget, there is still an issue, and there has been for many years, of people coming into the back of lorries. And the last figures, 2021, 9,000 people were found in the back of lorries having made that crossing into the UK.
So broadly comparable numbers to
Well,
those.
and that's those that were found. Remember, the difference is if you're in the Channel, you are discovered, maybe with one or
So
two
actually it's a much bigger
exceptions,
number.
you're discovered in the Channel and picked up by officials. If you've made it across the UK, OK, you then disembark at a local filling station in the hope of being picked up, and maybe you're caught by the police. But there will be many of these lorries that come into the country and the people disappear at the back to be picked up by God knows who, and we don't know about it. So the fact that 9,000 are being picked up should be, I think, a note of concern.
Cathy, if you could be Priti Patel's fairy godmother and give her a magic wand, and in one stroke, your recommendation to cure this problem would be?
Can I have two strokes?
Yes, you can.
Abolish the human rights legislation. Don't replace it, and get out of the European Court of Human.
European Convention on Human Rights.
And get out of both of those, then she can do what she wants.
Okay.
And then get the border force and the police working for you.
Cathy.
Third one.
And get France to stop them.
Oh, now you're in on the act as well. You weren't invited to exercise.
That's four.
Fairy
We've got.
godmother role, but there you go. Mark, Cathy, thanks both very much indeed. You're with Colin Brazier on GB News on TV, online and on digital radio. Coming up this afternoon, we'll be tearing you away from politics and casting our gaze towards the heavens, because NASA has shared remarkable photos from the James Webb Telescope. It's a costly venture, but the results are really stunning, and we'll talk to the space expert Andy Lound about those amazing images. And yes, the voting in the Conservative leadership election, it closed a wee while ago. The results in about 25 minutes for you, live from Sir Graham Brady. We'll have the results at 5 p.m. First, the news with Olivia.
Thank you, Colin. Good afternoon. It is 4:33. This is the latest in the GB newsroom. Counting is underway in the first round of the race to replace Boris Johnson. 8 leadership hopefuls are in the running. They'll need at least 30 votes to stay in the race. The results will be announced in the next half an hour. A YouGov poll found former Defence Secretary Penny Mordaunt is the favourite to win among Conservative voters. The RMT union says rail operators and workers at Network Rail have voted to strike on July the 27th. The 24-hour action will start at 2 a.m. and is over pay, jobs and conditions. In a statement, the RMT says the offer made by Network Rail represented a real-term pay cut for its members. A French government report has found Liverpool fans were unfairly blamed for the chaos at the Champions League final in Paris in May. Police fired tear gas at fans after some were accused of trying to use fake tickets to gain entry into the stadium. The report says authorities must learn lessons and apply them to the hosting of next year's Rugby World Cup and the 2024 Olympic Games. Figures obtained by GB News show more than 14,000 migrants have crossed the Channel so far this year in small boats. 4 men have been arrested in a national crime agency operation targeting people smuggling to the UK. A man was arrested in Dagenham on suspicion of facilitation offences, as well as 3 further men in Ilford, Streatham and Leytonstone. Soaring temperatures and scorching July heat means your health might be at risk. An amber warning for extreme heat has been issued across parts of England and Wales from Sunday. Ambulances have been put on the highest level of alert. The Met Office is advising everyone to be careful, not just those who are most vulnerable to the heat. TV, online and DAB+ radio. This is GB News. Now it's back to Colin.
We are GB News.
We're right across this great nation.
On TV.
On radio.
On digital. Absolutely everywhere.
We don't talk down to you.
We embrace all voices with honest and civilised conversation.
We are not part of the establishment.
We're one of you.
And we're only getting started.
Join us on GB News,
The People's Channel.
Britain's news channel.
Hi there, it's Stephen and Anne.
At breakfast from 6 a.m, you'll always be caught up with everything you need to know, the latest headlines, opinions and debates.
We'll bring you the good news and the bad, but most of all, we're here for you.
Remember, send in your views and let us know what you would like us to talk about.
That's because we're your news channel. And every morning at 6 a.m, it's breakfast on GB News.
My name's Tom Harwood and join me 9:30 a.m. every weekday for The Briefing, your one-stop shop for everything you need to know about what's going on in politics today.
I wonder if this is a deal that might need to be like the biscuits in this factory, twice baked.
Is there not an opportunity here to win out against the extremes?
Tom Harwood, GB News.
What are you going to do about it?
Things should have been done differently, and they certainly are being done differently.
Don't miss it. The Briefing with me, Tom Harwood, 9:30 Monday to Friday on GB News.
Where would you like to go? Just take me to the studio, please, mate. You know where you're going. I've got a show to do. Friday Night Feast on GB News, 7 p.m. And it's like nothing you've ever seen before. We take a different angle on the week's biggest news stories. The viewers and listeners set me some absolutely mad challenges to do. We're trying to rehome a rescue dog. And yes, there's some other wacky stuff in there as well. I feel like I could take on the world. Well, that's that. Friday Night Feast with me, Patrick Christys, every Friday, 7 till 9 p.m. on GB News. Be there.
Sir Graham Brady, in about 22 minutes, gets to have his say on the Conservative leadership election. He will announce the results of the vote that's been taking place this afternoon. Now it's time for your say. Some emails. Jim says, I will not vote for Sunak. There's already a huge campaign in the media plugging him as if he's a shoo-in already. Loads of pro-Sunak propaganda. I would vote Mordaunt and Badenoch, but not Sunak. It does appear on the basis of the poll we've heard today that the idea of voting for Penny Mordaunt is one widely shared. Roger says, I consider Penny Mordaunt an ideal candidate for Prime Minister. She'd be very capable of dealing with the illegal maritime immigrants situation because she's an officer in the Royal Naval Reserve and is therefore used to making difficult decisions and getting things done. As for her position on transgender, that's forgivable. No one's perfect. Susan says, no way do we want this ghastly woman as Prime Minister. I don't think we've written in, or maybe Susan hasn't written in, which ghastly woman she has in mind. I think we're presuming it's Penny Mordaunt. But she'll only be in for a short time, says Susan, then she will fall in the election. Dano says, watch how the grey men in grey suits close ranks and ensure Mordaunt doesn't get into the final two. Stick around, 20 minutes away from Sir Graham Brady's announcement. In the meantime, we'll distract you with this. A big buzz still around. The first set of photographs shared by NASA from the James Webb Telescope. The extraordinary images revealing early galaxies, how they're born, how they die, and much else besides. Space expert Andy Loud joins us now. Andy, welcome to you. How excited?
It was that excitement. We've been waiting for this for so long, 20-year project. And finally, we got the first good science data back from it. Just the first, and the first alone has opened our eyes up to something brand new already. And it's just the first 5 images that they've actually released. So it's been terrifyingly exciting, especially the deep field image, which has enabled us to see further back in time and deeper into space than ever before. I mean, it's just quite fantastic to be able to see an object that's 13.1 billion light years away. It's taken like 13.1 billion years to actually reach us. And the image you're showing now is Stephan's quintet galaxies. What's interesting there, this is a group of galaxies that are gravitationally tied and pulling together. They're doing the celestial tango, dancing together. Eventually, they'll be merging. And what's breathtaking about this image, Hubble did the image, brilliant, but this of course is much more sensitive, looking further into the infrared, and therefore it's actually be able to resolve individual stars in these galaxies, which is absolutely staggering, really. You just never imagined you would get to that level of detail, and it's showing how these galaxies actually are doing this dance together, where they'll eventually all merge and collide, part of it will create new star-forming regions, forming a very large galaxy at some point. And this is important because this lets us understand how galaxies form, how giant galaxies form, like the nearest galaxy to us, Andromeda, for instance. It's a giant galaxy, and that's already got a double central core. So I'm very excited for when Webb actually looks at that. But we also had, of course, that great data which came back, which was important, of WASP-96b, the planet going around another star. It actually analysed the atmosphere of another planet, a planet, that's 1,000 light years away, and found water vapour in its atmosphere. Now, at the University of Birmingham, interesting enough here, we've got a scientist who's very excited to look at atmospheres of planets because they could analyse what's in those atmospheres and give an indication whether there's any biological activity on those planets. And this was the first test to see if that could really happen. We then had, of course, the Southern Ring, a star that's exploded, but not just one star, it's a double star system. And for the first time, both stars were resolved. And then you could see the wave motion of the hydrogen as it pushed through into interstellar space, interacting. Absolutely breathtaking. And it's confirming what we think we know as star formation and such like. And then, of course, we had the Carina Nebula, which they showed us, the birthplace of stars. But not only that, the important thing of the Carina Nebula, not only was it resolved better, but the groups of stars which were above the coloured section, which people saw, you could actually see the shock waves from those stars hitting the nebula itself, which causes an effect on that nebula. Eventually, so many stars will be formed there that shock waves will disrupt the dust and gas and eventually stop star formation there. And
Andy,
the thing about Carina...
Oh, Andy,
yeah.
Andy, I'm being told to wrap you up, but I was so enjoying that description so much, I had to let you carry on. In a word, how much more powerful is the Webb than the Hubble? Twice, half, 5 times more?
No, we're tens of times more powerful from the optical capability. The mirrors are the multiple mirrors are a lot bigger. So this is far, far superior than anything we've ever had.
Andy, I really enjoyed Celestial Tango. I intend to use it more in conversation. Andy Land, thanks very much indeed. Our debate then, back to politics, I'm afraid, back to earth. We're asking which is more important right now for the Conservative leadership election and the themes that it generates. Is it about the economy, or is it what we've come to call the culture war? Cathy Gingell is here in the studio, editor of Conservative Home, and Albie Awankona, who's the co-founder of the Conservatives Against Racism for a Different Perspective. And Albie, we'll start with you if we can. I mean, the ideas that are coming through from the candidates, there don't seem to have been all that very many of them. There's been a lot of talk about tax, and it feels, and I know that Kevin Badenoch's been talking a lot about what we broadly call identity politics, but it feels at the moment that we're being reminded that it is the economy, stupid.
I think that is a very accurate phrase, Colin. The biggest issues facing this country, according to polling, are the cost of living crisis, supporting the NHS and the war in Ukraine, security, prosperity and healthcare. And essentially the next leader of the Conservative Party, and whoever wins this leadership contest and wants to go on to win the next general election will have to have solutions to those problems. I completely understand where people are coming from on the culture war side of things, but if we actually look at where issues like racism and transgender rights rank for the British people, they're right at the bottom of the list.
That's interesting, because Cathy Gingell, I was talking to Rod Liddle this time on Monday, and he said this is all about the culture war. If you're a red wall voter, actually, you're not that... I mean, yes, you are bothered about the state of the economy, but it's the other stuff that defines your culture that really matters to you.
Are you asking me?
Yes.
It's my turn. Sorry. No. I largely agree with what's been said. It's very low on people's agendas. There's very little evidence that we're a discriminatory, racist society. In fact, look at the candidates line up for the new Tory leadership. What better example could you have of the diversity that people seem to think we still don't have? Of course we have it. We've won those wars. We don't need to be concentrating on that. The war that the Conservative leadership contenders do need to be concentrating on is the type of wokeism and the identity politics that is so destructive. And I think the two things go together. A too interventionist state and too many quangos tends to encourage very destructive and negative wokeism that doesn't help with levelling up. It doesn't help with the freedom for people to get on and sort of do the best that they can do with their lives.
Can we just pull up the slate again? And I apologise if you're listening on the radio; it won't work for you, but you will if you're watching on the telly. The 8 candidates. If we just throw up the graphic again, showing those 8 candidates. Albie, how important is it in modern Britain that we look at that list of 8 candidates and it exemplifies diversity? I mean, it's actually more representative, if that's the right phrase, than the reality on the ground. But if you are, a young Asian woman, a young black man who considers themselves to be attracted, he's attracted by conservative philosophy. You look at that gallery, and does it change your thinking?
I think what will be important to them and what is important to me is how talented these people are and how they've risen to their positions of success through their own hard work. But of course, look, if you are a young black or Asian conservative, looking up at that leadership slate is going to make you think conservatism is for me. I could vote for the Conservative Party. I could break this expectation that if you are not, a typical conservative, that you can't vote for them and you're some sort of race traitor. So, of course, representation matters in that respect, but what truly matters in this leadership contest are people's abilities, people's ideas, and people's ability to get the job done.
Cathy, I'm going to go back to my slate since we've been able to pull it up, and I'm going to labour this point a little bit more, which is that we're talking about the importance of the culture wars within this conversation for the leadership of the Conservative Party. But isn't that slate the key point within the culture wars? That's the take-home message for a lot of people who are not actually as, drooling over politics like...
I mean, as I said before, it shows that the culture war in terms of creating a genuinely, I hate this language personally, diverse society, opportunities for all. It shows that that's won. The war that still possibly hasn't been won is the economic disadvantage war, the class war, the fact that we've got, I don't know how many people on benefits who seem to be trapped there. These are the real issues. And in a way, those issues about the heavy weight of the state, the heavy welfare dependency population have got lost in this sort of argument about diversity and colour and Black Lives Matter. Well, every life matters, So, yeah, basically, yes, I agree with you. That bit's done.
OK. Albie, before we let you go, if this poll from YouGov is to be believed, no reason why it shouldn't be, of Conservative Party members, it sounds like Penny Mordaunt is a shoo-in. How do you feel about that?
I feel very happy that both Penny Mordaunt and Kemi Badenoch actually make the top 2 in that YouGov poll that you have just referenced. I think they're 2 fantastic candidates. They're not tarnished by being part of Boris Johnson's cabinet, and it's clearly what the Conservative membership want. I personally would like to see someone from outside of the cabinet leading our party and leading our country, but I completely appreciate how unlikely that is.
Albie Amankona and Cathy Gingell, thanks both very much indeed for your thoughts. If you're just tuning in or just switching on the radio, people still do that? About 10 minutes from now, we will hear from Sir Graham Brady, the chair of the influential Backbench 1922 committee, addressing the cameras. We'll bring it to you live as he announces the latest results of the Conservative leadership election. Also coming up, yesterday, around about this time, we broke the news that an inquiry had concluded that more than 1,000 children in Telford had been sexually exploited over the course of 3 decades. Its final report found that massive problems, weren't investigated because of nervousness about questions surrounding race. We'll discuss that next, but first, the weather.
Hello again, I'm Aidan McGivern from the Met Office. It's turned into another fine day for many, with warm sunshine across large parts of the country and dry for most, but not for all. There are some showers coming along for Scotland and Northern Ireland. With low pressure to the far north, we are seeing some influence from that, but high pressure remains close to the south and the west of the country, and as a result, well, plenty of sunshine to come for England and Wales, clear spells overnight, and some clear spells for Scotland and Northern Ireland, but further showers coming into western and northern Scotland, parts of Northern Ireland as well, particularly towards the northwest. Overnight, it will remain relatively mild, 12 in Glasgow and Belfast, 12 in Cardiff, 15 in London there. So warm as we start off Thursday, but not oppressive overnight, I think. And a bright start for many with plenty of sunshine for England and Wales. A few more showers, though, will appear during the morning and into the afternoon, notably for parts of northern England, especially the Pennines, and more widespread across Scotland and Northern Ireland compared with the last couple of days. 18 to 19 Celsius in the north, 23 to 28 across southern parts of the UK, with plenty of sunshine once again and light winds for parts of England and Wales, particularly the further south you are. Into the evening on Thursday, the showers ease away, clear skies for a time, but a little feature will bring some outbreaks of rain into western Scotland and Northern Ireland by the end of the night. Temperatures will stay up in the teens in many places, perhaps dipping into the single figures in some very sheltered spots. So again, not oppressively warm overnight, but not particularly chilly either. Clear start to the day on Friday in the south, plenty of sunshine here. Cloudier further north with outbreaks of rain moving through Scotland and Northern Ireland during the morning. They clear and then sunshine widely on Saturday and Sunday and turning hotter.
Every morning from 6 o'clock, we'll wake you up with GB News Breakfast with all the stories you didn't know from the night before.
So whether it's serious news, entertainment, or your own views from all over our great nation, we're here to kick off your day with a smile.
And the national media should be reflecting and reporting what's happening here.
You will notice the northwestern accents.
Whether you're with us on TV, radio, or online, every morning it's breakfast from 6 a.m. Hope you can join us.
We are GB News.
We're right across this great nation.
On TV.
On radio.
On digital. Absolutely everywhere.
We don't talk down to you.
We embrace all voices with honest and civilised conversation.
We are not part of the establishment. We're one of you.
And we're only getting started.
Join us on GB News,
The People's Channel.
Britain's news channel. Hi there, it's Stephen and Anne.
At breakfast from 6 a.m, you'll always be caught up with everything you need to know, the latest headlines, opinions and debates.
We'll bring you the good news and the bad, but most of all, we're here for you.
Remember, send in your views and let us know what you would like us to talk about.
That's because we're your news channel. And every morning at 6 a.m, it's breakfast on GB News.
My name's Tom Harwood and join me 9:30 a.m. every weekday for The Briefing, your one-stop shop for everything you need to know about what's going on in politics today.
I wonder if this is a deal that might need to be like the biscuits in this factory, twice baked.
Is there not an opportunity here to win out against the extremes?
Tom Harwood, GB News.
What are you going to do about it?
Things should have been done differently, and they certainly are being done differently.
Don't miss it. The Briefing with me, Tom Harwood, 9:30 Monday to Friday on GB News.
Where would you like to go?
Just take me to the studio, please, Matt. You know where you're going. I've got a show to do. Friday Night Feast on GB News, 7 p.m. And it's like nothing you've ever seen before. We take a different angle on the week's biggest news stories. The viewers and listeners set me some absolutely mad challenges to do. We tried to rehome a rescue dog. And yes, there's some other wacky stuff in there as well. I feel like I could take on the world. Well, that's that. Friday Night Feast with me, Patrick Christie's, every Friday, 7 till 9 p.m. on GB News. Be there.
Just hearing that Mike Penning, currently Vice Chairman of the Conservative Party, has resigned so he can campaign for Penny Mordaunt. So Graham Brady's live announcement of that leadership election is about 4.5 minutes away. We'll be over there very shortly. Meantime, around about this time yesterday, we told you the authorities had ignored the grooming and sexual exploitation of more than 1,000 children in Telford because of nervousness about race. So says a final report, an independent inquiry into abuse that goes back to the 1980s. It found teachers and youth workers were discouraged from reporting obvious evidence that police dismissed as child prostitution. Let's turn to Kevin Hurley, former Detective Chief Superintendent at the Met, who's pondered on this problem for some time. Kevin, welcome to you. What did you make of this report?
Well, it's just one of a long list of reports, you name it, around the country, Keighley, Rotherham, Oxford, Bristol and so on, where this particular type of behaviour has been going on, exploiting vulnerable girls. And sadly, it is a fact that because police officers and social services, more important, their bosses, actually were scared of being accused of being racist. They didn't pursue those with perhaps a diligence, or in fact not perhaps, didn't pursue them with the diligence that they should have done. I think there's one important point I'd like to make on this.
Kevin, I'm going to just ask you for one more thought, but as we're talking, we're going to throw up on the screen the live pictures from the 1922 committee, because there's an important story today in the life of the nation, and that is who becomes our next Prime Minister, people filing into that room. So if you don't mind, we'll keep those pictures up. And can I just ask you, Kevin Hurley, about whether you think this is still happening in many, many British towns and cities?
Yeah, I'm pretty sure this kind of thing will still be going on. I mean, I go back actually to my days when I was the elected Police and Crime Commissioner in Surrey, and I thought, well, if this is going on everywhere else, let's find out if it's happening in Surrey. And I and my team did an inquiry on police intelligence files, and we found that there were cases of grooming occurring in Surrey that were not being picked up by the leadership of the force at that time. I've got no doubt that because this is all about opportunity and circumstances, people perhaps operating minicabs, taxis late at night, vulnerable young girls out away either from broken families or looked after in children's homes and so on, they have the opportunity to exploit that. And one of the problems behind this is the taxi trade in most of our towns and cities is now controlled by men of Pakistani heritage, essentially from the Mirpur region of Pakistan in the Kashmir area. It concerns me that we're so politically correct here that people keep saying this is a South Asian problem and so on. It is not Hindus, it is not Sikhs, it is not Buddhists, it's not Sri Lankans who are involved. It is a specific small group within the Pakistani community who are for the most part involved in doing this up and down the country. And it's like any type of offence or crime. Until you deal with it precisely, you can't get the correct intervention. So it's a fudge to kind of talk in these terms and say it's South Asians. It is not. And I'm not saying this to tarnish all Pakistanis or whatever, but you need precision if you're going to identify this offending and then go after it proactively.
Is it, just in terms of the language that's used, Kevin Hurley, do you note, as I do as well, that sometimes it feels like there's a determination to blame anybody else, councils, social workers, people like you who've worked as police officers, if that avoids talking about the perpetrators?
Yes, of course. I mean, all the time you see it in every aspect of our lives, where different groups who are, if you like, the flavour of the month, the ones who are the victims of our society, or they claim to be, you know, it's not about their involvement in it. It's always the fault of the police, the social services, the teachers, or even the fault of the politicians. You know, the fact is there are chunks of people in our society who need to sort themselves out. And within those groups, there are people and leaders who know what's going on and they need to speak out and have something done about it.
Kevin Hurley, I'm going to cut you off there and say thank you as ever for your contributions, because we know that Sir Graham Brady, chairman of the 1922 Backbench Conservative Committee, is a very punctual MP. He said this will happen at 5, with no reason to dispute that. So, Kevin, thanks very much indeed. Take a look at the live pictures from inside Parliament. Take a look there at our political editor, Darren McCaffrey. Darren, what do you know?
Well, not very much at this stage, Colin, in the sense that it is not leaked out. We were speculating about whether it would or not. We are now awaiting this result, as you say, from Sir Graham Brady in the next minute or so. He's going to stand up. We're going to get the numbers today. We didn't get that yesterday, of just how many MPs are backing each of the candidates. And just to remind you of the rules, that in order to get through to the second round, which we suspect will be tomorrow, that you need to get over 30 MPs backing you. Now, at this stage, almost certainly Rishi Sunak, Penny Mordaunt and Liz Truss are already there. The others, you know, maybe there and thereabouts. We'll have to wait and see whether they get over that 30 threshold. You know, people like Rishi Sunak will be way out in the lead. Penny Mordaunt got pretty substantial support now as well among MPs. But someone will go out today, even if everyone, Colin, gets above that 30 mark. There is going to be at least one candidate,
Okay,
who will be kicked
Darren,
out,
here we go.
Finishes bottom. But
Yeah, fine. It's the wrong piece of paper. It's what I prepared earlier. Good evening. Good evening. I can now announce the result of the ballot held this afternoon. I'll read the names of the candidates in alphabetical order with the number of votes secured by that candidate. Badenoch, 40. Braverman, 32. Hunt, 18. Mordaunt, 67. Sunak, 88. Truss, 50. Tugendhat, 37. Zahawi, 25. Therefore, under the rules that we agreed for this ballot, 2 candidates will be eliminated, Jeremy Hunt and Nadhim Zahawi. The others are all able to go forward to the second ballot, which takes place tomorrow. Thank you very much.
And with that, Darren, we learn of the elimination of former Health Secretary Jeremy Hunt, and he was only Chancellor for a day, but he did reach that high office, Nadhim Zahawi. Both gone.
Indeed. Well, he is still Chancellor, and he will be, Colin, I suspect at least until September. But you're right, it may not last much beyond that. You're right, he is out of that race along with Jeremy Hunt, the man, it must be said, who finished second last time round. Fascinating, and this is why it's so unpredictable. Clearly, in order to get into the first round of the vote, you needed 20 MPs. Jeremy Hunt had 20 MPs backing him. Today he's only got 18, which means that some of the MPs who were backing him yesterday have clearly switched sides. Also, you look at the numbers involved and you are starting to see, at least I would suggest now, 3 substantial front runners, maybe 2 actually when you really boil it down, and they are clearly Rishi Sunak as the former Chancellor. He is way out in the lead with 88 MPs backing him, and Penny Mordaunt, who's had quite a start to her campaign, real sense of momentum behind her today, is in second with 67. Liz Truss, who would have thought maybe she might be doing better at this stage, is on 50, though, you know, some of the other candidates on the right, Badenoch and Braverman, they are still in the race, and they've got a combined vote of 72. It is possible that if and when they pull out, their MPs may well break for them. Tom Tugendhat will be a little disappointed, I would have thought, with that number of 36, but he is still in the race. What ultimately I'm trying to say, Colin, is we are starting to see 3 main candidates now in this race. That is the former Chancellor Rishi Sunak, the International Trade Minister Penny Mordaunt, and the Foreign Secretary Liz Truss. I mean, I would almost certainly say at this stage they will be in the final 3. The big question is which of those 3 will make it into the final 2. And at the moment, the momentum at the very least seems to be behind Penny Mordaunt. She had a campaign launch this morning. I was there. Lots of big name MPs backing her. And clearly those polls this afternoon would show that she has got quite a lot of support among Conservative members, that she would win every single runoff against every single opponent, is clearly weighing heavily on MPs who are now, frankly, congregating towards her. Most recently in the last couple of minutes, Sir Mike Penning, who was the Vice Chair of the party, has resigned his position as a Vice Chair of the party to go and campaign for Penny Mordaunt.
Darren, thanks very much indeed. Darren McCaffrey there. Let's turn to the consultant editor at the Daily Mail, Andrew Pearce, who joins us now. Hi to you, Andrew. Exciting stuff.
Hello. Yeah, and what's really interesting, Colin, the 3 in the front are all Brexiteers. Sunak, who didn't campaign very much for Brexit, but he was on the record, he supported Brexit. Penny Mordaunt was a big campaigner for Brexit. Actually, no, Truss is a Brexiteer now, but she wasn't before the referendum. But when we heard Jacob Rees-Mogg and Nadine Dorries backing him, they said she's more of a committed Brexiteer than anybody. So this is all about now. I think they're the 3 who will be in the last runoff, and I think Penny Mordaunt has got momentum. And if I was Rishi Sunak, I'd be very, very worried, because I think now she's looking strong. She had a very slick launch today, not as slick as Sunak's, which was too slick for my liking, actually. But she's getting momentum, and people like Mike Penning, who's resigned as vice chairman of the party supporter, he's a wily old fox. He masterminded Ian Duncan Smith's surprise elevation to be leader of the Conservative Party back in 2001, when everybody assumed Michael Portillo had it in the bag. It was Mike Penning who managed Ian Duncan-Smith to the leadership. OK, it didn't last long, only 2 years, but he got him over the line. Penny Mordaunt would be very pleased to have him.
Andrew, I've got Cathy Gingell here, who is spitting tax at the thought of Penny Mordaunt doing really, really well. Well, I mean, you know, Cathy, you're just going to say a piece, the case for the prosecution.
Well, I've already discussed the trans thing, that somebody who really has ever in their life been unsure about whether a man's a man or a woman's a woman, really we have to worry about. But there's more than that. It's the fact that there's a big gap between the sort of type of patriotic statements, you know, bringing back the idea of the Falklands War, Thatcher. There's a big gap between that and her quite globalist technocratic tendencies, her pushing of the net zero thing. She's said climate change is the greatest disaster facing man. She's bought into the global elite totally on a load of her values, that they're not conservative values. I haven't heard her say anything about immigration. So I think she's done a good PR job on herself, but I think it's skin deep. And also, she hasn't actually been, Minister of Defence for about 3 months, not a great substantial. That wouldn't pass the test of one of the three main officers of state that you sort of need to pass at this stage.
Andrew, what do you say to that?
Well, my concern about her is, and Cathy will have talked about this already, I'm really concerned about the fact that when she was in the Equalities Department, she peddled this appalling line that you have pregnant people, not pregnant women. Now, she says that was a policy she inherited. Well, what did she do about it? Did she argue privately it was wrong, or did she agree with it? And so I find that very, very troubling, because I do not want a Prime Minister who buys into the trans lobby. It's a minor group of people, fewer than 1%, 900,000 people possibly, and there's 47 million people will be voting in a general election. So those sort of issues worry me if they come to the fore. I think if she gets into the last two, it could be rough and ropey for her, because as Cathy Gingell says, she's very inexperienced. She was in the cabinet. She did do the international development brief for a while, but that's a job which isn't exactly high-powered. And she was Defence Secretary for about 5 minutes. The problem is, I suspect she'll be in the runoff with Rishi Sunak, and a lot of Tories I know don't think he's very Tory, because he's saddled us with the biggest tax burden in our history, going all the way back to Clement Attlee. That will be the problem, because I think it'll be Sunak versus one of the other two, either Liz Truss, the Foreign Secretary, who's not very charismatic, let's be honest, she's a terrible public speaker, or Penny Mordaunt. So who knows? It's fascinating stuff. Very glad to see Jeremy Hunt out, though, because he was obviously lent votes before, and we don't want him anywhere near it. He screwed up on Brexit, and he was a massive caller for massive restrictions on COVID. And when he was Health Secretary, he should have been planning for a pandemic, and he didn't. So he's finished. He's history. Good.
Andrew, if it is, as you tell it, Sunak versus Mordaunt or Sunak versus Truss, there is a sense, because Rishi Sunak has been Chancellor, he's been in the crucible of Number 11, he's been in the crucible of Downing Street. We've seen his dirty laundry aired to some degree. Now, we do live in a sort of post-News of the World newspaper world, don't we, where not every political secret is ventilated in the way it once was. But I think it's not unreasonable to say that there's a lot we still don't know about some of those people who might make the runoff.
Yeah, that's true. And we know quite a lot about Rishi Sunak, of course. We know about his fabulous wealth and the fact his wife was a non-dom until it was exposed in the media, and he took great exception to it being exposed, saying his wife was being persecuted. No, we were entitled to talk about the fact the Chancellor of the Exchequer, who raises taxes in this country, his wife was, I won't say avoiding taxes, but as a non-dom, she wasn't paying much tax here. And also, it's still this curious thing, Colin, that we've never got to the bottom of. Why did he have a green card, effectively pinning his colour to the American mast, until last October? He'd been a minister for years. Why didn't he get rid of it straight away? I think all that is very, very troubling, and these issues will come to the fore if he is in the last two, because there'll be questions he'll be asked again and again. There's a lot more we don't know about Penny Mordaunt. She's got a very interesting backstory. She's a twin. I know that I think her mother died when she was very young, we do not know what her view is on immigration. There's lots of things we don't know yet.
Yeah, and I just wonder, Andrew. I'm guessing you sit on those Daily Mail editorial meetings where they decide what the paper's position is. Have you struck a position yet at the Mail on who should be the next Prime Minister?
That's above my paycheck, of course, because that would be a matter for the editor, Ted Verity. But I would be most surprised if we went anywhere near endorsing Rishi Sunak because of our concern about the tax burden. We kept saying, do not raise national insurance, do not raise corporation tax, and for God's sake, get VAT off fuel, something we can now do now we've left the wretched European Union. So it would be, I presume, the other one, whoever that is, which still could be Liz Truss, the Foreign Secretary. Yeah. But she needs to brighten up and get some charisma, because there isn't much there at the moment.
Yeah, you can't order it off the internet, can you? That's the problem.
No, it's very difficult.
Andrew, thanks very much indeed. Andrew Pierce. If you are just tuning in, let me just recap on those votes. We'll turn the whole thing around soon. You can actually see Sir Graham Brady doing this. In the meantime, I'll impersonate the chair of the 1922 Backbench Committee. He said in the last 10 or so minutes, Kemi Badenoch had secured the votes of 40 MPs, Suella Braverman, 32, Jeremy Hunt, only 18, he's out. Penny Mordaunt, 67, underlining what the polls have been saying, that the wind is very much behind her and in her sails. Rishi Sunak, still out front with the members, if not the MPs, if not with the members of the party. 88 MPs voted Rishi Sunak. Liz Truss, perhaps a little bit disappointingly, 50. Tom Tugendhat, 37, and as I was corrected by Darren McCaffrey, Nadhim Zahawi, who is still very much Chancellor, 25 out as well, alongside Jeremy Hunt. Let's turn to the General Secretary of the Free Speech Union, Toby Young, to ponder on this. Hi to you, Toby. It's an enthralling democratic spectacle, this. Are you impressed by it?
I'm not sure I'd describe it as impressive. I'm going to hold fire on that one and see who they end up selecting as the leader. But I think you've slightly buried the lead here, Colin, which is just how well Kemi Badenoch has done. She's come fourth. I mean, it's really quite surprising. I don't think a week ago anyone would have predicted that this 42-year-old MP who's never been in the cabinet and who wasn't widely known to most people a week ago, would be in, the remaining pack of 6 in the leadership contest, having seen off Sajid Javid, Nadhim Zahawi, Jeremy Hunt. It's pretty impressive that she's managed to get this far. Priti Patel didn't even enter the race. She's currently the Home Secretary, and yet this junior minister has ended up in 4th place. And it looks like that if Suella Braverman drops out in the next round, I can see quite a few of her supporters shifting to Kemi. So I don't think we should write off Kemi as finishing in 3rd place, possibly even 2nd place.
Yeah, no, and I'm looking at those numbers, and I've just told the viewers about them, and it's entirely possible that on 40, if she gets the lion's share of Suella Braverman's 32, it could mean that she ends up ahead of Liz Truss. Toby Young, just hang on while we get Cathy Gingell to throw her 2 penneth in, because I know she's got strong opinions about Penny Mordaunt's emerging candidature and what, according to the polls, is looking very promising for Penny Mordaunt. Kemi Badenoch, Cathy, you're a fan too.
Yes, she's got charisma. She's the only one with charisma. And you should hear her, if anyone hasn't, in the House of Commons. It's very available on YouTube, to her giving it to various progressive, left, woke Labour MPs. She doesn't mince her words. So that's hugely refreshing. But she has less experience than Suella Braverman, so it could go the other way. She's certainly won her cabinet position, I would have thought, just today. Now, any new leader has to give her a decent job in the cabinet if they've got any sense, because she's now known. The thing that hasn't been mentioned in all of this about Rishi is that he's been the least fiscally responsible Chancellor of the Exchequer we've ever had. Everyone seems to forget this. So that would be my other comment, which I think, again, in the next week or so will be focused on. His profligacy, his failure to resign over the corruption, over the a COVID loan scheme when Lord Agnew resigned. It should have been him who resigned. He went along, he couldn't say no to Boris every time furlough was extended. He hasn't shown a strength of character. So those things are going to come out.
Toby.
Yeah, I share Kathy's reservations about Rishi Sunak. I think one of the reasons I think Kemi is such a strong candidate is that she's not tainted by association with the current government to nearly the same extent as Rishi Sunak is. You know, I think people want a change. People want to see a genuine conservative leading the party, someone who actually speaks honestly, someone who speaks with conviction. And I think Kemi ticks all those boxes. And I think if the final two, it comes down to Kemi versus Rishi, I can see Kemi getting it.
We can play in, unhelpfully, if you're a supporter of Penny Mordaunt, the moment she was at the dispatch box and was asked to describe what a woman is. Here's the clip.
Chris Hope, last question.
Penny, last one, a quick one and a straightforward one. How do you define a woman?
I'm a woman. I am biologically a woman. And I can tell you, Chris, that if you have been in the Royal Navy and you have competed physically against men, you understand the biological difference between men and women.
Not the dispatch box, sorry. Her launch this morning of her campaign. A question there from the Daily Telegraph, I think it was, Christopher Hope. She knew that question was coming, Toby.
She did, yes. This is her big Achilles heel. She got up at the dispatch box and genuinely at the dispatch box last year and said that as far as she was concerned, trans men are men and trans women are women. And it looks as though she was involved in replacing the word mother with pregnant person in some legislation last year. She's proven to be very woke, very closely aligned with trans rights activists in the LGBTQ plus community over the past 5 years or so. She's definitely trying to distance herself from that position now and fall into line with what she thinks are the non-woke views on this issue amongst the party membership. But I think that could be her undoing, and I think it would make it very difficult for her to compete effectively, to campaign effectively against Keir Starmer in a general election campaign. When she's asked the question, do you think it's possible for a woman to have a penis? No doubt she'll say no, but if someone can point to her having said that actually she does think that's possible in the past, it'll just make her look like another dishonest politician.
Kathy Gyngell, I know Toby has strong opinions about this, so do you, so do I. I interviewed Rod Liddle at the start of the week. He said this is the defining issue. The culture wars trump everything else, including the state of the economy. Is that really true, Kathy?
If the state wasn't so big, I would probably agree with. The two things can't be separated. You cannot separate the culture that we're in, the wokeism, the way it's marched through the main institutions of government, the main institutions of the state, of the church, of the law. You cannot any longer separate this out. So while we have a very statist conservative government where the state is managing so much but doesn't take any of this on, the two things are too close to separate out to say one that matters more than the other. We've got to have a big state pullback. Then some of the battles might be able to be fought. But at the moment, the emphasis is on wokedom everywhere and throughout the state. And the Conservatives have been in charge of the state for the last how many years? 12 years.
Kathy Gyngell, Toby Young, we appreciate your time. Thanks both very much indeed. Coming up, we'll be talking to Nick Varley. Nick Varley was head of ground campaigns on the Vote Leave campaign ahead of the referendum. What does he make of what we've just heard?
Hello again, I'm Aidan McGivern from the Met Office. It's turned into another fine day for many, with warm sunshine across large parts of the country and dry for most, but not for all. There are some showers coming along for Scotland and Northern Ireland. With low pressure to the far north, we are seeing some influence from that, but high pressure remains close to the south and the west of the country, and as a result, well, plenty of sunshine to come for England and Wales. Clear spells overnight and some clear spells for Scotland and Northern Ireland, but further showers coming into western and northern Scotland, parts of Northern Ireland as well, particularly towards the northwest. Overnight, it will remain relatively mild, 12 in Glasgow and Belfast, 12 in Cardiff, 15 in London there. So warm as we start off Thursday, but not oppressive overnight, I think. And a bright start for many, with plenty of sunshine for England and Wales. A few more showers, though, will appear during the morning and into the afternoon. notably for parts of northern England, especially the Pennines, and more widespread across Scotland and Northern Ireland compared with the last couple of days. 18 to 19 Celsius in the north, 23 to 28 across southern parts of the UK, with plenty of sunshine once again and light winds for parts of England and Wales, particularly the further south you are. Into the evening on Thursday, the showers ease away, clear skies for a time, but a little feature will bring some outbreaks of rain into western Scotland and Northern Ireland by the end of the night. And temperatures will stay up in the teens in many places, perhaps dipping into the single figures in some very sheltered spots. So again, not oppressively warm overnight, but not particularly chilly either. Clear start to the day on Friday in the south, plenty of sunshine here. Cloudier further north with outbreaks of rain moving through Scotland and Northern Ireland during the morning. They clear and then sunshine widely on Saturday and Sunday and turning hotter.
Hello, I'm Patrick Christys.
And I'm Mercy Moroki.
Make sure that you join us Monday to Thursday, 10 a.m. until midday, right here on GB News for To The Point.
We're not afraid to talk about the topics that matter to you or the big topics that always matter.
We cover absolutely everything, from the breaking political stories of the day to law and order, what's going on in the channel. We're not afraid to hold people to account.
We always make sure we include your views on our show.
Indeed, if you're thinking it, you can guarantee that we're saying it. So make sure you join the conversation with us, 10 a.m. until midday, Monday to Thursday, for To The Point on GB News. We are GB News.
We're right across this great nation.
On TV.
On radio.
On digital. Absolutely everywhere.
We don't talk down to you.
We embrace all voices with honest and civilised conversation.
We are not part of the establishment. We're one of you.
And we're only getting started.
Join us on GB News,
The People's Channel.
Britain's news channel. Hi there, it's Stephen and Anne.
At breakfast from 6 a.m, you'll always be caught up with everything you need to know, the latest headlines, opinions and debates.
We'll bring you the good news and the bad, but most of all, we're here for you.
Remember, send in your views and let us know what you would like us to talk about.
That's because we're your news channel. And every morning at 6 a.m, it's breakfast on GB News.
My name's Tom Harwood and join me 9:30 a.m. every weekday for The Briefing, your one-stop shop for everything you need to know about what's going on in politics today.
I wonder if this is a deal that might need to be like the biscuits in this factory, twice baked.
Is there not an opportunity here to win out against the extremes?
Tom Harwood, GB News.
What are you going to do about it?
Things should have been done differently, and they certainly are being done differently.
Don't miss it. The Briefing with me, Tom Harwood, 9:30 Monday to Friday on GB News.
Where would you like to go?
Just take me to the studio, please, Matt. You know where you're going. I've got a show to do. Friday Night Feast on GB News, 7 p.m. And it's like nothing you've ever seen before. We take a different angle on the week's biggest news stories. The viewers and listeners set me some absolutely mad challenges to do. We tried to rehome a rescue dog. And yes, there's some other wacky stuff in there as well. I feel like I could take on the world. Well, that's that. Friday Night Feast with me, Patrick Christys, every Friday, 7 till 9 p.m. on GB News. Be there.
It's a little after 24 minutes past 5. If you've just tuned in, you missed this. It happened at 5 o'clock.
Under the rules that we agreed for this ballot, two candidates will be eliminated, Jeremy Hunt and Nadhim Zahawi. The others are all able to go forward to the second ballot, which takes place tomorrow.
And before that, he made clear that according to the numbers, Rishi Sunak and Penny Mordaunt were out front. But what he didn't say, but what we've been saying for much of the afternoon, is that there was a poll of party members. It's their say ultimately that's important here. They get to decide between the final two. And if Penny Mordaunt's in the final two, well, it's almost as we could call it a done deal. She's way ahead, Penny Mordaunt, the Trade Secretary. In response to that announcement at 5, Michael said, amongst our emailers, brilliant news, the removal of Jeremy Hunt has put paid to Sunak being able to control who he will be facing in the final two. Interesting analysis. John says, poor Penny Mordaunt's now received the kiss of death politically by being head and shoulders above the rest of the leadership candidates in the view of Conservative voters. Just watch the political pygmies gang up to stop potentially the most competent Prime Minister for years. And Mike says the next Prime Minister must be a true Brexiteer like Penny or Liz. Paul, I'm so glad that Penny Mordaunt looks to be taking the lead in the Tory leadership election. The nightmare scenario would have been a choice between Prudence Sunak and Remainer Truss, which would be like being asked to choose between Gordon Brown and Theresa May. Kevin says, I've been a fan of Penny since day one. However, her woke position on what is a woman is deeply worrying. Well, from resolving problems with the Northern Ireland Protocol to forming new international trade deals, there are many opportunities from Brexit which remain to be exploited in the opinions of many. Will the next leader be able to accomplish them? We're joined by Nick Varley, who was one of the most senior campaign heads for Vote Leave. Nick Varley, welcome to you. Appreciate your time. What did you make of what Sir Graham Brady had to tell us at 5 o'clock? It's a clarifying position that the field is becoming much clearer.
Well, it is and it isn't, Colin. I think it is actually really still wide open. There are 4 candidates in Truss, Kemi Badenoch, obviously Penny Mordaunt and Rishi, who have put in sort of probably as strong as expected or stronger. I think Badenoch's numbers are pretty good. I think Penny Mordaunt's number is strong as well. And I think that, at this point, there really are still 4 candidates clearly who could make the final 2. I think there's a big question for Suella Braverman and Tom Tugendhat's campaign about whether the right thing to do is to go forward to the second round or whether their candidate's interest is best served by starting to negotiate with the kind of 4 front runners. I think it'll be very interesting to see if everybody goes forward from tomorrow. This is not, there is no runaway steam train in this campaign. There's been a lot of talk about Rishi's campaign, very slick, very well organised, very sort of professional, but that has clearly not put Rishi in a position where he's going to be able to guarantee a place in the final 2. So I actually think it's really still wide open. I think Kemi and Penny Mordaunt are clearly the sort of 2 candidates with the most momentum. The sort of imagined coalescing of all of the Brexiteers around Truss appears not to have materialised. I think that this is still a difficult one to call, and I'm not sure that we're any the wiser as to what parliamentary members of the Conservative Party are thinking, or whether indeed they've clearly not coalesced around a single position.
But Nick, as somebody so closely involved with the formation and the conduct of the Leave campaign, you're cheered by the way that it appears that you've got to be a Leaver to be getting on in this.
Yes, I think the centre of gravity of the Conservative Party has changed. If I think back to 2019, in the last leadership election, there were candidates essentially arguing about whether Brexit really should be done, whether we should have a soft Brexit or a hard Brexit. And of course, all along, there was the simple fact of delivering on the result of the referendum meant leaving the European Union and not sort of pretending to have done so in an obscured fashion via staying in the single market, etc. So I'm hugely cheered that what is absolutely apparent is that in order to become the leader of the Conservative Party on the 5th or the 6th of May, the candidate has to be a Brexit optimist. They have to think that the United Kingdom being in charge of its own laws and its politicians being accountable exclusively at the ballot box, they have to think that's a good idea and that it's an opportunity, not a risk to be mitigated. And I'm very heartened by that.
And is it enough? Is it, we look at Penny Mordaunt. I mean, the story today, maybe it's been trumped by the announcement at 5 o'clock, but certainly this afternoon, the story was, and for me it is the story of the day, is this poll showing her she's way, way out ahead. Admittedly, 800 people sampled. It's not a gigantic poll, but it tallies what Conservative Home are hearing as well, which is that amongst the party members who ultimately get to decide who is our next Prime Minister and leader of the Conservative Party, she is doing incredibly well. Now, yes, she's a Brexiteer, but there'll be many Brexiteers who look at her woke credentials, what's a woman, etc. They won't be happy with that. I mean, do we conclude that actually to be a Brexiteer does not mean you come, therefore, with a prescribed list of set values?
No, I think to think that the United Kingdom should govern itself and that British politicians who make British laws should be accountable to British voters, does not necessarily prescribe upon anybody a particular set of beliefs or values. I think that the overall impression I have of all the candidates, you think about Liz Truss as an example, she was obviously voted Remain, was a strong advocate for Remain, but is one of the cabinet ministers that you would look at and say, well, Liz Truss in her time post-referendum has been a strong advocate for seizing the opportunities. But I think also there's a question around, holding the office of Prime Minister inevitably entails compromises. And if you have to make, if a new Prime Minister has to make compromises with dealing with the realities of life, I think my preference probably remains with an individual who sort of was with leaving the European Union from the start. I think that frame is the one that I hope the new Prime Minister will see the world through.
Nick Varley, good to talk to you. Thanks very much indeed. Kathy Gyngell listening to that. The frame, says Nick Varley, the Brexit frame fits around the next Prime Minister. That's the thing that really matters. Forget your wokey-cokery.
I suspect not, because I think we've passed from Brexit to a form of globalism. The big elephant in the room that is astonishing that none of these contenders have discussed is lockdown and the disastrous and destructive impact lockdowns had on the country. And nowhere, I know the thing that might win my vote, not that I'm not a Conservative Party member, so I can't vote, but were I, would be a commitment to never again with a lockdown. Never again do this to our children. Never again leave old people abandoned and shut up in care homes where their relatives couldn't visit them. It was irrational. It was Chinese policy. We've had no proper apology from any of the candidates about it. None of them resigned over it. And then following that, I'm afraid none of them are addressing the vaccine victims and the big problem with what I think was a reckless vaccine rollout. So these two huge issues in this election are going unaddressed. And I think that actually is a dreadful reflection on the state of parliamentary politics. Not just the Conservatives, Labour too.
Email you like here from Sian. Loads of emails coming in on this since the 5 o'clock announcement. Sian says, on Penny Mordaunt, I've cancelled her ever since she talked about pregnant people. Wokey codswallop, she says. Let's use the word codswallop more often. It's a cracker, isn't it? It's time for the news with Olivia.
Colin, thank you. It's 5:33. Here's the latest from the GB newsroom. Chancellor Nadhim Zahawi and former Health Secretary Jeremy Hunt have been knocked out of the race to replace Boris Johnson. They've failed to gain the required 30 votes from fellow Tory MPs to get through to the next stage. 6 candidates remain in the battle to become the next leader of the Conservative Party and therefore Prime Minister. Former Chancellor Rishi Sunak and Trade Minister Penny Mordaunt won the most votes. So Graham Brady announced the results earlier this hour.
Under the rules that we agreed for this ballot, 2 candidates will be eliminated, Jeremy Hunt and Nadhim Zahawi. The others are all able to go forward to the second ballot, which takes place tomorrow.
Rail operators and workers at Network Rail have voted to strike on July the 27th. The 24-hour action will start at 2 a.m. and is over pay, jobs and conditions. The RMT union rejected an offer made by Network Rail, saying it represented a real-term pay cut for its members. A French government report has found Liverpool fans were unfairly blamed for the chaos at the Champions League final in Paris in May. Police fired tear gas at fans after some were accused of trying to use fake tickets to gain entry into the stadium. The report says authorities must learn lessons and apply them to the hosting of next year's Rugby World Cup and the 2024 Olympic Games. TV, online and DAB+ radio. This is GB News.
We are GB News.
We're right across this great nation.
On TV.
On radio.
On digital. Absolutely everywhere.
We don't talk down to you.
We embrace all voices with honest and civilised conversation.
We are not part of the establishment.
We're one of you.
And we're only getting started.
Join us on GB News,
The People's Channel.
Britain's news channel. Hi there, it's Stephen and Anne.
At breakfast from 6 a.m, you'll always be caught up with everything you need to know, the latest headlines, opinions and debates.
We'll bring you the good news and the bad, but most of all, we're here for you.
Remember, send in your views and let us know what you would like us to talk about.
That's because we're your news channel. And every morning at 6 a.m, it's breakfast on GB News.
My name's Tom Harwood and join me 9:30 a.m. every weekday for The Briefing, your one-stop shop for everything you need to know about what's going on in politics today.
I wonder if this is a deal that might need to be like the biscuits in this factory, twice baked.
Is there not an opportunity here to win out against the extremes?
Tom Harwood, GB News.
What are you going to do about it?
Things should have been done differently, and they certainly are being done differently.
Don't miss it. The Briefing with me, Tom Harwood, 9:30 Monday to Friday on GB News.
Where would you like to go?
Just take me to the studio, please, mate. You know where you're going. I've got a show to do. Friday Night Feast on GB News, 7 p.m. And it's like nothing you've ever seen before. We take a different angle on the week's biggest news stories. The viewers and listeners set me some absolutely mad challenges to do. We're trying to rehome a rescue dog. And yes, there's some other wacky stuff in there as well. I feel like I could take on the world. Well, that's that. Friday Night Feast with me, Patrick Christie's, every Friday, 7 till 9 p.m. on GB News. Be there.
Tonight, a Mark Stein special. For the first time ever, victims of the vax come together to point the finger at the government.
It turned out, within 10 days he had died of the vaccine.
She showed me her gums, they were turning black. Obviously we knew that something wasn't right.
I think the word is spreading.
The way that these people and many other people have been treated is a national shame. I think it is a disgrace.
Thank you to you, Mark, because you in the UK have put this issue on such a pedestal, and it deserves to be there because this is a national scandal.
Victims of the vax, tonight at 8 o'clock.
If you are just switching on, tuning in, a big moment at 5 o'clock. Not such a great moment if you're Nadine Zahawi or Jeremy Hunt. They are out of the Conservative leadership race. Kemi Badenoch continues to do pretty well. This was the moment.
Under the rules that we agreed for this ballot, 2 candidates will be eliminated, Jeremy Hunt and Nadine Zahawi. The others are all able to go forward to the second ballot, which takes place tomorrow.
Rishi Sunak out in front, 88-67 for Penny Mordaunt, who is also enjoying a lot of support from the party membership, whose decision it will be ultimately to decide who becomes our next Prime Minister. Emails are plenty. Ruth says, I just want to say if Sunak gets elected, I will not be voting Tory again. Jane says the Tories can elect Penny Mordaunt if they wish. It's a woke virtue signal by the privileged MPs and shire dwellers of Little England, if I've ever seen one. If they want my vote, they need to speak to traditional British values. And for me, the only candidate doing that is Kemi Badenoch. Trevor says if Sunak or Truss becomes PM, the Conservative Party is dead in the water at the next election. It has to be someone who hasn't held a cabinet office before, but also not woke Penny. And Sian says, I read this out a moment ago, but I'll read it again. On Penny Mordaunt, I cancelled her based on that pregnant people, wokey codswallop. There you go. It's worth reading again just for the use of the word codswallop. And David says, Kemi for us, she's brilliant. Elizabeth, the party needs to think long and hard about their final 2 candidates, as this could determine their future. And for me, Penny Mordaunt and Rishi Sunak are a political no-go. Well, let's turn to GB News presenter Calvin Robinson, who has, I'm sure, got some thoughts on where this race is now left. Calvin, should we start with Penny Mordaunt? This is somebody who would used pregnant people rather than what we have been using for several millennia, mother.
Yes, indeed. This non-gendered language is incredibly woke. On other issues, I don't think she is woke, but on this, she is compromised. probably to do with her twin brother, who is an LGBTQ plus activist. Maybe that's something to do with it. But, she's also been at the dispatch box and said that trans women are women. Now, for me, that's a fundamental lie, because we know that trans men are men, trans men are trans men, and trans women are trans women. Women are women, and men are men. It's quite simple. A woman has 2 X chromosomes and is an adult human female. Anyone that cannot say that fundamental fact cannot lead the country, because if they lie about that, what else might they lie about? But I am pleased to see, Colin, that Jeremy Hunt didn't make it into the next round, because this is a gentleman that wanted to not only have vaccine mandates for COVID, but said that we should have vaccine mandates for the flu too, as in forcing people to take an ineffective vaccine without bodily autonomy or choice. That's a very dangerous precedent.
Yeah, I mean, funnily enough, Calvin, on the point about Jeremy Hunt, but more broadly, to what extent, if at all, the lockdown and COVID and the Vax programme is entering into this conversation at all amongst the candidates and those people voting for them. I was just saying to Cathy Gingell that it has to wait. That as a topic, it's got to wait for the general election, because this lot do not want to talk about it.
Oh, absolutely. I love Cathy, and I think she's spot on with a lot of these issues. But in regards to the vaccine mandates, I spoke to Kemi Badenoch this morning, who said that she was against the vaccine passports. And she has voted in line with the government at times because she was a minister, and that's all about collective responsibility. But if she was a leader, she would not be anywhere near vaccine passports. So that's something that's important to recognise. And I think actually she's probably our best shot at getting a Conservative leader, a truly Conservative leader. She is someone that speaks the truth, doesn't mince her words, but also is not afraid to stand up. She stood up to Number 10 on the Black Lives Matter issue when everyone was adopting critical race theory language, and she said, no, this is not acceptable, and promoted the Sewell report and the Cred report instead. So I think she's got a good chance. But also, if we look at who's left, Zahawi is out already. Braverman and Tucker Hart should, I think, they're decent, but they should, at this point, back Badenoch, because if it comes down to Sunak versus Mordaunt, that's not a choice I'd like to see. In fact, why are we looking at only 2 options anyway? This is a stitch up from the beginning. The Conservative Party membership should get an election across a broad range of candidates, preferably about a handful. I think 5 would be a good number. But for 2 suggests that there is an establishment that wants a particular candidate to win and is doing anything they can to force that.
That is the Reverend Calvin Robinson. Calvin, good to talk to you. Thanks for your analysis. Appreciate it. One of those candidates who remains in the final half dozen, Tom Tugendhat, former Intelligence Corps officer, and also somebody who proposed yesterday that it was high time that the British defence budget got at least 3% of GDP. Let's see what the former First Sea Lord, Admiral Lord West, makes of that plan, and whether it's something that the other candidates, perhaps more likely ultimately to reach Number 10, make of defence spending. Lord West, is it a topic that's playing to any great extent in the minds of these candidates?
I think the answer is it's not, and it rather worries me. I must say that it's a national disgrace that our armed forces, as of today, are not ready and able to take on a peer-to-peer opponent. The Chief of Defence Staff stated quite clearly that the armoured division that we promised to NATO as a result of the NATO conference would not be ready for operations and have its full stockpiles and people and the rest of it until the 2030, 10 years away. Now, 10 years away is not good enough. If we don't show Putin that we're up for something now, that's more likely to lead to war. Wars tend to start in August as well, and yet and great international crises. And here we are without effectively any real government. I mean, that's very worrying. And yet none of them, I mean, Tom Tugendhat's mentioned, I think he would spend money on defence, that's good. But they need to be spending money now, and I'm amazed that all of them haven't focused on this. A major war in Europe, the whole Ukraine thing, is pretty important. And yet it hasn't really featured. I mean, we've been talking about wokeness and things like that, but my goodness me, that pales into insignificance compared with the possibility, closer than it's been for decades, of there being a world war.
A major war in Europe, as you say, a genuine prospect thereof. And I wonder whether you feel, whatever you feel about Boris Johnson, there is that consensus that he led from the front and maybe even led America into a tougher line on Ukraine than it might otherwise have taken. Is there a danger that with him gone or on the way out, that there is a vacuum in Western leadership on Ukraine?
I think it's unlikely, having seen the results of the NATO summit And there's no doubt that Boris Johnson did push the Ukraine thing well. He did well there. And indeed, he's got lots of strengths. But my goodness me, he's got huge weaknesses as well, and that's what's done for him effectively. But I think with the outcome of the NATO summit, I think that enough nations have realised how important this issue is. But when you look at some of the other European countries, they're talking big in terms of what they're going to do. The speed with which they're spending is not going to match that. Now, we should be setting an example. I think Penny Mordaunt understands defence to an extent. I know Penny. I must say she never talked about men, women, and who's women and all this sort of thing with me ever, I have to say.
Well, go on. I mean, Lord West,
no
give us an insight, because I mean, it's enraging many of our viewers and listeners, and I think you're probably right. They like the Brexity cut of her jib. They're puzzled by the woke stuff.
Well, as I say, and certainly when I've talked to her, we've never, it doesn't even crossed my bows to talk about it. We've never talked about those things. It's been other issues. And as I say, she is, I do think she understands the military a bit better. I mean, I'm afraid Rishi Sunak, I don't think he understands defence. And I think Boris, more strength to his arm, had to twist his arm to get that money in the settlement 2 years ago, which was very useful, but didn't make up for the 1/3 reduction in our military capability caused by the coalition in 2010, thanks to the Lib Dems, effectively.
Admiral Lord West, we appreciate your time as ever. Thanks very much indeed. Cathy Kinjal is alongside me here in the studio. You take the view that there's not been enough time spent talking about lockdown. What about defence?
No, absolutely not. But again, you've had a Conservative government, as Lord West, since 2010 that hasn't addressed it. And if you look at an economic graph, you continue to see this steep rise, upward curve in welfare spending, in NHS spending, and at the same time crossing it, a sharp downward curve proportionately in defence spending. And I understand, I mean, Lord West would know better, that we could marshal about 5,000 combat troops only at the moment. Well, whoever we're fighting or not fighting, this is a ridiculous thing for a leading global economy. Final thing is, Rishi Sunak blew, and Boris Johnson, between them, 500 billion over lockdown. That's our debt. Somebody, I suppose, has to magic more of that magic money for defence, but it's very difficult because there's been so much waste.
Cathy, for now, thanks very much indeed. Let's turn to Ella Whelan, another regular contributor on this news channel, author and journalist who joins us now. Ella, I don't know whether you saw the announcement or you've heard about the announcement from 5 o'clock. I'm sure you've heard about it and the numbers that we're left with. 6 people left in the running. But actually, in a sense, that's not the story today. The story, arguably, I would argue, is this poll of Conservative Party members saying Penny Mordaunt is way out in front.
Yes, and politics is never boring, let's put it that way, because I think lots of people were pretty complacent in the idea that Sunak was going to be the man who was, I think most importantly, was able to beat Starmer. I think that's what the way lots of people were putting it, that Rishi Sunak had the best chance out of all of them to win any forthcoming election when faced with the challenge from Starmer, because we know that Labour has been creeping up the polls and that, in fact, out in lead in certain polls. But it seems that, Penny Mordaunt, who, let's remember, she's not exactly come from nowhere. She's not a kind of, she's not like Kemi Badenoch. She's well known in terms of as a political figure, but has, you wouldn't have put her certainly as a front runner. And I think that, withstanding all the stuff that I agree with you enrages me about discussions about pregnant people and things like that, she's a kind of conflictual character. So of all the candidates, for example, in relation to talking about something, women's freedom and women's rights, of all the candidates, she has the best record of voting in relation to abortion rights. So, whether or not she's says ridiculous things like pregnant people, she certainly has been, supporting the idea of pregnant women to make free decisions. So that's something, and in relation to what's just been talked about in relation to defence and also in relation to Brexit, she marks herself out as someone that's slightly different from Sunak, who I think has been too quick to point the finger in the last few days. He's made a bit of a show of himself, not just by pretending to be a poor boy and being embarrassed about that, but by...
Emma, does that matter? Does that? I know we've asked this before, but I've heard literally 3 or 4 people say this to me today, and they've said he can't possibly be Sunak too rich?
Well, I think no, but I don't think any of us really care about how much money somebody has, because at the end of the day, we know that Boris Johnson was blowing 500 quid on tablecloths and stuff. It's like we're used to this kind of thing by now in politics as it happens. Suella Braverman's gotten into trouble for slagging off benefit scroungers while she herself has been claiming over $4,000 in expenses for a second home and things like that. So we know that these people have lots of money. But I think the thing about Rishi Sunak is that he has, in a field in which there is a lot of BS, lies going around, there's a lot of kind of spin happening. He's someone who could have, could have said something different, but instead tried to play this donkey jacket routine, tried to say, I'm a normal guy from normal bringings and I'm just like you. Most people know that he's not just like us. What we care more about, or what Conservative voters who are invested in this care more about, I should say, is what is his policies. And he spent the last few days slagging off his own policies that he put into place, whether it was in relation to tax rises or what's happened throughout the pandemic, and saying, I'm going to do things differently. I think lots of people think, well, why didn't you do it differently last month or last year? So there's, I think in a crowded field of people who are being sort of duplicitous or liberal with the truth, let's say, I think there's not many who stand out. Even someone like Kemi Badenoch, who I think the best that can be said for her, she says really good things on free speech, and she's kind of cut through a lot of the rubbish that's been talked about in politics at the moment. I think you have to remember that it's a very low bar to, one, say that Brexit was an acceptable thing, that's a low bar. But two, to say that, men and women are men and women. We have to kind of remember the context here and say, hang on a minute, I know we're in this weird political situation where life is topsy-turvy, but if the best thing you can say about someone is that free speech is important and I'm not going to use gender-neutral language, it's
that's actually
that exciting.
Ella, we'll say thanks for now. Ella Whelan there. Actually, Cathy Gingell, who's alongside me, has been making much the same point throughout the course of the last couple of hours. Here's a thought. Penny Mordaunt now, as of today, is front runner. Well, let's say it for what it is. If you look at the polls, the people who ultimately make the decision, members of the Conservative Party, she's way out in front. She will now face a level of scrutiny, whether that's grubby tabloid hacks going through her bins, metaphorically, if not literally. Certainly people going through old tweets and all that digital archaeology that now goes on. I mean, we'd assume that most of it will be out there. But now we know she might be Prime Minister, people really will be digging.
Well, I think it's not just, I don't think digging on the person, well, we do need a person of decent character. So digging on private lives will happen. Much more important, really, in the big scale of things is your stance on the big issues, on our energy security, or net zero, on our defence security. There are a range of things that haven't been mentioned so far as we talked about. So if we could see from Penny Mordaunt that she was going to draw back on the disastrous net zero policies, which will impoverish people, their whole spans of policy, we need to know where they stand on, fundamentally.
Cathy, for now, thanks very much indeed. Michelle Dewberry's going to be with you in about 5 minutes or so. Michelle?
So I am. I will be following your conversations as well on the whole kind of Tory leadership competition. It's getting like an episode of X Factor already, Colin. We've had people registering domain names that are going elsewhere. It's all interesting, isn't it? Who is going to be the next Prime Minister? So that will keep us busy for the first part of the programme. Then I want to talk about the whole, the situation yesterday that was passed about agency workers being able to cross picket lines and keep industry moving. Is that the right thing or not? And also foreign aid, a conversation which divides many. But the UK has slipped down the Transparency Index. So we'll be looking at what's going on.
OK, Michelle, thanks very much indeed. Always difficult for us to know what the right split between the big political story of the day and other news. Ordinarily, I have to say, I incline more towards getting the other news away. We did do that remarkable story about the space telescope, didn't we? That was one to enjoy. What was the language? What was Cathy? Can you help
Galactic...
Celestial Tango.
Celestial Tango,
Thanks for that. Celestial Tango. If you are just turning on, let's just recap that on the news from the last hour. And that is that if you are a supporter of Nadhim Zahawi or Jeremy Hunt, the former Health Secretary, well, both those guys are out of the running to be the next Prime Minister. If you're a supporter of Rishi Sunak, he got 88 MPs votes. Penny Mordaunt, though, appears to be the emerging force in British politics tonight. Stay tuned for more on this and the rest of the news. Michelle.
Hello again, I'm Aidan McGivern from the Met Office. It's turned into another fine day for many, with warm sunshine across large parts of the country and dry for most, but not for all. There are some showers coming along for Scotland and Northern Ireland. With low pressure to the far north, we are seeing some influence from that, but high pressure remains close to the south and the west of the country, and as a result, well, plenty of sunshine to come for England and Wales. Clear spells overnight and some clear spells for Scotland and Northern Ireland, but further showers coming into western and northern Scotland, parts of Northern Ireland as well, particularly towards the northwest. Overnight, it will remain relatively mild, 12 in Glasgow and Belfast, 12 in Cardiff, 15 in London there, so warm as we start off Thursday, but not oppressive overnight, I think, and a bright start for many, with plenty of sunshine for England and Wales. A few more showers, though, will appear during the morning and into the afternoon, notably for parts of northern England, especially the Pennines, and more widespread across Scotland and Northern Ireland compared with the last couple of days. 18 to 19 Celsius in the north, 23 to 28 across southern parts of the UK, with plenty of sunshine once again and light winds for parts of England and Wales, particularly the further south you are. Into the evening on Thursday, the showers ease away, clear skies for a time, but a little feature will bring some outbreaks of rain into western Scotland and Northern Ireland by the end of the night. And temperatures will stay up in the teens in many places, perhaps dipping into the single figures in some very sheltered spots. So again, not oppressively warm overnight, but not particularly chilly either. Clear start to the day on Friday in the south, plenty of sunshine here. Cloudier further north with outbreaks of rain moving through Scotland and Northern Ireland during the morning. They clear and then sunshine widely on Saturday and Sunday and turning hotter.
Tonight on GB News. At 6, it's Deebs & Co. 7 o'clock, Farage. At 8, join Mark Stein. And at 9, Dan Wootton Tonight, followed by Headliners.
We are GB News.
We're right across this great nation.
On TV.
On radio.
On digital. Absolutely everywhere.
We don't talk down to you.
We embrace all voices with honest and civilised conversation.
We are not part of the establishment.
We're one of you.
And we're only getting started.
Join us on GB News,
the People's Channel,
Britain's news channel.